sitting right here. And let's bring in on the phone a gentleman who writes for ESPN, sports writer and analyst for the Worldwide Leader. He is also a motivational speaker. He writes primarily about the NBA, but he can write and talk about just about anything. He is Chris Broussard. Chris, thanks for joining the show.
Oh, you're welcome. How you guys doing?
Doing just great. Chris, what about the NBA playoffs interests you most right now?
Wow. I think they've been great. Obviously the last few games we've had some blowouts, but all the buzzer beaters. Every series is interesting. Obviously, you're always interested in LeBron James as the best player in the world. So that's an intriguing series, especially with the injury to Kyrie Irving. Kevin Love is one thing, but now you got Kyrie Irving struggling with his health, so LeBron has to pick it up and play better as he did in the last game. In the West, Memphis, Golden State, I'm hoping that Game 6 is close. I'd love to see Memphis win the fourth of Game 7. With the injury to Tony Allen, that series kind of took a turn and hasn't been as competitive as it was earlier. So I'm hoping Allen can play well in Game 6 and really make this thing intriguing. I think the Clippers series, I'd be surprised if this went 7. It's always great to have a Game 7, but I think the Clippers clearly are the better team, and I think they'll close out the Rockets in 6.
Chris, it's Woody. Chris, of course, is the very best and has been for a long time, not only in terms of his opinions and reporting, but his accuracy. I think its reputation. So
he's 90% from the free throw line, I understand.
I've learned everything from Woody back in the days of cold pizza.
Don't mention cold pizza. We had George Bodenheimer on yesterday, and he didn't want to go. He didn't want to go there. That was one of his brilliant insights, was creating cold pizza. But Chris and I used to have to get up at 3:30 in the morning and do that.
That's right.
I want to ask you. I want to go, as I do, off in the weeds. With the playoffs up to this point, who is a player that has jumped out at you that you went, wow? We've got, LeBron. Everybody talks about LeBron and all the usual suspects, as I call them. But has there some guy that stepped up during the playoffs and you went, boy, I like what he's doing?
Well, I don't think anybody that's actually emerged as a star. Although Bradley Beal, I say Bradley Beal's been the closest. We all have known he's a really good player. His problem is that he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he's really stepped up for the Wizards and played well for them. So he looks like he's starting to, emerge into a star. But other than him, nobody else I think has really taken over that you wouldn't expect to. But I think, I'd have to point to a guy like Austin Rivers. Let's face it, Austin Rivers has not had much success in this league. He has not played well, for most of his career. Certainly we didn't do much in New Orleans. And a lot of people thought if Doc didn't pick him up, he potentially could even be out of the league right now. And so for him to step up, start a few games in the second round of the playoffs, we know what he did against San Antonio in the one game. But, he's played well, and he's really kind of emerged as a guy that you can say is a legitimate rotation player in the NBA now. And remember, coming out of high school, he was viewed as, he was one of the top players in the country. And so maybe that potential is there. But I think he's one guy I look at and say, man, maybe this is going to be a guy that a few years from now can, really be a good player in this league, because he's been a bit surprising.
Chris, you could be a general manager in this league. I'm going to place you in the position of being a general manager. You have a coaching vacancy. You have a team that has to be rebuilt. You look out on the field of possible candidates.
Who are you talking about, Wood? Who are you talking about, by chance?
Because it's different. I'm going to give you a few answers. Number one, if I'm New Orleans or Orlando, I'm looking at Tom Thibodeau, and they are looking at Tom Thibodeau. I think he's a tremendous coach. One of the best 5 in the league, in my opinion. And so one of those teams, like Thibodeau maximizes his team's potential. Okay, he gets them, and I believe, as far as a team can go. So I think if he goes to Orlando, they got some good young talent. I think they could fight for and maybe make the Eastern Conference 7th, 8th seed next year. If he goes to New Orleans, I think he can get them, if they're healthy, to, maybe make the playoffs in the West. Let's face it, they wouldn't have made it this year if it wasn't for Oklahoma City being injured. But I think if Thibodeau goes there, maybe a Dallas falls out or something like that. But I think he can get New Orleans into the playoffs. Now, at Denver, I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm Denver, I'm keeping Melvin Hunt. And, I mean, he did a good, solid job, at the end of the season. But it goes beyond that. He's a guy that, a lot of people view as could be a potential head coach, a good head coach in this league. I think he did a good job when he got the chance. The players like him, which isn't always a blessing, but still, they do. Sometimes it can be. And they like him, and I think they'll play for him. But this is the thing. Denver's not going to be that good next year no matter what. Part of it is that they're just in the tough Western Conference. And let's face it, look at the teams at the top. Golden State's not going anywhere. Oklahoma, at least until Durant and Westbrook leave, if they do, they're not going anywhere. Portland now, they could lose LaMarcus Aldridge, so they could fall out. That's a spot, but maybe New Orleans gets in there. Houston's going to still be good. Memphis is still going to be good. You never can count out the Spurs. Dallas will still be fighting at least for a playoff spot. So my point is, I think part of Denver's problem is that they're in the West. And you got some good young players, obviously, Ty Lawson and so on and so forth. But I'm thinking, look, why bring in a coach that you're going to have to pay a ton of money, whether it's a Scott Brooks, a Mike D'Antoni, whoever it might be? Why bring in a coach you're going to have to pay a ton of money to who is not getting you to the playoffs next year? I don't care who it is. He's not getting you into the playoffs next year unless there's just a host of injuries to the top teams. And so I think you go with a young coach like Melvin Hunt. You don't have to pay him as much as some of these bigger name guys. And, see what he can do. He may turn out to be another very good head coach in this league. But my point is just that I'm sorry, I'm not paying a ton of money for a guy that's probably, 90% sure he's not getting me into the playoffs.
Chris Broussard's appearance on the show brought to you by the Blake Street Tavern, where you can watch all those Nuggets losses next year. 3 bars under one roof. They've got 18,000 square feet, 60 HD TVs. It's located just a couple of blocks north of Coors Field. Denver's best sports bar for 3 years in a row, as proclaimed by Westward.
All right, Chris, I'm going to tie Woody's question to this year's playoffs. Here in Denver, there was a question mark about the style of play. And I'm going to tie that to Golden State. Can a jump shooting team win the title? Do you need to be a more half-court traditional style team to win the title, in this year's playoffs?
Well, obviously, that's been the conventional wisdom, and that's been how it has been in the NBA forever. You need a big man. You need some size. That's one of the things that's interesting about the Memphis Golden State series. It is kind of a battle of styles. Memphis is old school. Couple of bigs are two of their best players, and they pound you inside. Obviously, Golden State shoots the three, plays up and down. I think you do need some size. It doesn't have to be terrific size. I mean, Andrew Bogut is solid, look at Cleveland. Timothy Miles, Tristan Thompson, they're solid. They're not great. But I think you need some good size. Doesn't have to be star type of size. But I also have to admit the NBA is changing, man. It's really changing. And these guards have a far more of an impact on the game. I mean, look at the MVP. Back when Isaiah Thomas played, who I think is the best small player ever, he never won an MVP, and probably never. I mean, he had some votes, but never really got that close because back then it was big men, or at least forwards that were pretty much dominating. And then Jordan comes in, so you had 2 guards. But very few point guards until recently won MVP awards. So now the game is changing with the point guard dominating the basketball, the increased importance of the 3-point shot. So I can't fully say not today that you can't win it without a great big man. But I do think you need some size, and I think Golden State size is adequate. Because Bogut, David Lee, when he plays, he can get you some post points. So if they get beat, though, you saw Phil Jackson's tweet a couple days ago how he kind of mocked the 3-point shot or the reliance on it. If they get beat, that's certainly what you'll hear from a lot of people is, you still need that size. But Houston has a great big man in Dwight Howard. They're about to go down. So, it remains to be seen. But the game has changed. Certainly size is not as important as it used to be.
Chris Broussard of ESPN. Chris, we really appreciate your time. Besides ESPN.com, where can people find you? And on, of course, television, where can people find you? Twitter handle, all that stuff.
Twitter is Chris_Broussard. Yeah, I guess Twitter and TV.
All right. Well, we watch all the time.
And let me throw this in because I sent some sadness over my comment about the Nuggets. Look, a year from now, you're going to have money. I mean, everybody's going to have money because of the salary cap going up with the new TV deal. But you still, or even the old cap, you'll have plenty of money. You have a lot of free agents. That, to me, give Melvin Hunter 1 year, see what he can do in 1 year, options for a second or whatever. And, then when you can rebuild this team, maybe with some star players, then if he doesn't do a good job, you might want to go after a bigger name coach.
Yeah, I don't know that you.
That's my philosophy.
I don't know that you sensed sadness. We were sitting here thinking about how can Denver get into the Eastern Conference.
Yes, I'm with you. Look, to me, it's simple. You even out the schedule. Everybody plays everybody else about 3 times. It wouldn't be exact, but basically 3 times. And it's 1 through 16. You can keep the conferences if you want, but you even out the schedule. Because even now, if you took, say, the best 16 record, it still wouldn't be fair. Because the Western teams are still playing a tougher schedule, and yet they still have the best record. So I'm with you, Woody. I mean, New Orleans, you guys, Phoenix, it's kind of sad the difference in the conferences at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of sad they let George Karl go and let all those players go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. It's always fun to talk to you.
We'll talk to you
Take care of
soon.
yourself.
Chris Broussard.
Yeah.
All right.